Okay, hello. In this video, it's a follow-on from some previous ones where I discussed the connections between geometry, numbers and time. Now, it might, for some people's minds, it might be easy at that point to say, well, it's just sort of syncs up nicely. It's, got to do with base 10 and, and a legacy from the imperial, and it's not really meaningful. Well, I'm going to show you now how the modern meter and the imperial system goes back to no less than the building of the Great Pyramid, which is usually said to be 2500 BC. That's another story about the origin and date of it, but now we're also going to connect the esoteric with symbolisms such as used by the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, and how they connect. So essentially now what I've drawn here is a 24 pointed star, and in an earlier episode I pointed how the difference between the 12 pointed star creates the Maltese cross, but the Templar cross comes from the 24 pointed star, and I'll highlight that here. And this we're going to connect to the Great Pyramid of Giza, the most remarkable building ever built, and it was built at the dawn of time. History is false. It is ridiculously false, and the measurable facts are written in stone, while the academics argue over scraps of hieroglyphs. The actual data is recorded in the stone for all time. It can be measured, it can be tested, and it's there. They simply refuse to acknowledge it because it would destroy the existing paradigm of history, which is false. But here we have a stand. Now here we see the beginning of the Knights, the Templar cross, which appears from the 24 pointed star. 24 hours in a day is as old as Egypt. So, and not only that, you will find it in cultures across the world, how similar, referencing time in the same way, in the way that their calendars and the numbers in their calendars, the measurements of their temple, the numbers of statues, etc. of their temple will all come back to this geometry. And this is a very simple experiment you can do at home. And essentially we're going to make a clock with a piece of string, and where are we? Sorry, pardon me, I've extended. So we have the Templar cross emerging from the 24 pointed star. And here is the beginning of the geometry and a series of connections which cannot be, they can be maybe ignored by some, but they can be tested, and the implications are massive. So we see now the 24 pointed star, and I'm going to have to remove the camera, so I'm going to be a little bit shaky for a moment. Okay, now here we look back. So here we see the Templar cross emerging from the 24 pointed star. The Templar cross, let me see if you see, okay, we should focus in. Okay, so we see the Templar cross creates a 30-degree arc. That's 1800 seconds of a compass, sorry, 1800 minutes of the compass, or 108,000 seconds. 108, there you go, that's to start. But what I have now here is a 1 meter ruler. Okay, so the 1 meter ruler, people will say that well, because it's written in Wikipedia, but the meter is a relatively new measurement. I would say that this is nonsense, because this will now connect the Old Kingdom Royal Cubit, the Great Pyramid, which is the recognized Old Kingdom measurement, which is Petrie and others as the base unit of the Great Pyramid. So we have 1 meter from the center of the star. Okay, 1 meter from the center of the star, and here we see how 1 meter forms this arc. So essentially what I've done is you would draw a large circle around this, and the circle has a 1 meter radius. Now if that 30-degree arc created by the Templar cross, which is 108,000 seconds, is pi over 6 or 0.52359 dot dot. So we're just going to simplify that to 0.5236. The ancient Egyptian royal cubit was 0.5236 meters. So pi over 6 meters equals 1 Egyptian royal cubit, and very conveniently that section of the arc is equal to 0.5236 radian. And so 1 Egyptian royal cubit is, as I'm going to show you now, is equal to a 1 second frequency. We're going to make a pendulum. Essentially, we're going to make a clock, and we're going to connect the allegedly modern meter with the ancient Egyptian royal cubit and show how the Great Pyramid is scaled to Earth and to time and to the meter through this very, very simple geometry in a very, very simple way. Okay, now this is an earlier prototype, but it's essentially, this is the same construction that I drew with built on the 24-pointed star, creating a 30-degree arc, and that section of arc is 0.5236 meters. So now I'll have it and a pendulum. So the center of gravity of this so the center of weight of the pendulum is the important point, and we have the to where I've tethered it. So from the central point to the center of gravity of this pendulum is exactly 1 meter. Now let's look what happened. Mersenne, forget the exact date. The early meter was defined by a 1 second swing of a pendulum. If you do a search, you'll find that they have it slightly less than a meter, but you need to remember that that's at standard gravity. Because the Earth is a globe and it's spinning, the gravity is slightly more at the equator than what it is at the pole. So as we move from the equator or back towards it, the gravity will change, and effectively will change the way that this pendulum acts. But so we've created this 30-degree arc, and now here's a very interesting thing, how the meter connects to the second. As long as I don't swing this arc more than 30 degrees, so get it out there, and let's let it swing. What's happening now is that if you time this, we have a 1 second frequency. So for 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, it's going. This is a super, not in the age of atomic clock, super accurate might be a bit of a stretch, but this is a very, very accurate clock, and this system was essentially, well, this is where from our electronics, before the electronic age, we had to do things differently, and the young people probably have lost sight of that. But here we have a 1 second clock. Here's the interesting point. So it has a 1 second frequency, which means theoretically, because eventually we'll lose momentum, but per day, this will create 86,400 per 24-hour period. So 1 meter creates a 1 meter pendulum, as long as it isn't swung outside of this arc, which is 0.5236 meters, pi over 6 meters, which that arc is 0.5236 radian, coincidentally. And that arc is also 1 Egyptian royal cubit. So 1 second equals 1 meter equals pi over 6, or 1 Egyptian royal cubit, and 5.236 radian. Radian is, we usually work on 360 degrees. Radian divides the circle essentially into 2 pi. But if this isn't interesting enough, 86,400, that's the frequency. Multiply the maximum. So let's now jump over. We're standing in front of the Great Pyramid of Giza, and we're standing at a corner of the Great Pyramid. So we don't just see one base, we see 2 bases. So that's the most you can see. Standing at the corner is the maximum observable base length. So it's essentially, anyway, now it's 756 feet each base. That's the pyramid itself, but the pyramid sits on top of something called the socle, or the paving stones, and at the corner of the pyramid there are something called the sockets. So the sockets will give the pyramid extra base width, and the socle gives the pyramids extra height. So we're not working off the pyramid, we're working off the Great Pyramid and the whole, not just the pyramidal shape, but also the structure on which upon it is built. Multiply the maximum visible base by 86,400, or the amount of seconds in a day, and you get the circumference of the Earth above 99.94%. The accuracy wasn't rivaled until the satellite age. 86,400 times the height of the pyramid, including the socle, gives us the polar diameter of the Earth. Again, to a level that it wasn't rivaled until the satellite age. So 86,400 seconds per day on a 1 meter pendulum at 108,000 seconds arc, which is 1 Egyptian royal cubit, pi over 6 meters, pi over 6 radian. Now back to geometry. If I was to make a cube and put a sphere inside the cube, the ratio of volume between them would be 1 to 1.05236. So this is also a cube being a hexagon in a 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional, a hexagon with a circle inside. And so anyway, 1 meter equals 1 second, 108, 1 Egyptian royal cubit, pi over 6 radian, pi over 6 meters again, 86,400 frequency, multiply Great Pyramid of Giza by 86,400, multiply the height, you get the polar diameter of the Earth, multiply the maximum visible base, you get the circumference of the Earth. Now, I very much respect Randall Carlson, Scott Onstott, and Graham Hancock, but I dispute that 432 is the sacred number of the Great, or 43,200. It's 86,400, because this is a much more elegant way of doing it. The 43,200 method gets a bit messy because you have to use a bird's eye view and then multiply it by 2 and stuff. If I stand at the corner of a pyramid, I get the maximum visible base and I get the maximum visible height. From that one position, I multiply the height or the base by 86,400 and I get the dimensions of the Earth. So my mind blew when I come across this. You can test it at home, test it, do it. This is the beauty of the geometry and the measurements. It can be, you draw a vesica, you make a hexagon, and the world is yours.